He invited his barren ex-wife to his baby shower to humiliate her. But she came with triplets. Everyone froze when I walked into his baby shower. The same man who once called me barren now staring at the 3 children he swore I could never have. His champagne glass slipped, his fiancée's smile shattered, and the truth he buried for years came walking in wearing matching bow ties. I didn't come for revenge. I came with receipts and triplets. You really thought I'd just stay home? The words hit like a gunshot through the pastel-soaked backyard, silencing every nervous giggle, every sip of champagne, every fork mid-air above a tray of overpriced macarons. Christian turned so fast you'd think someone yelled fire. Alyssa, his glowing pregnant fiancée, blinked like she'd just seen a ghost. And maybe she had. Because the woman walking toward them wasn't the broken ex-wife they expected to stay in the shadows. It was me, Jennifer Blackwell, wearing silence like armor, strutting in heels that owed no one an apology, and holding the hands of 3 perfectly dressed toddlers, my triplets, each one living proof that Christian's version of the story was a fairy tale he wrote to cover the truth. And the look on his face? Priceless. This was the same man who once sobbed into my lap about how we must be the problem. The same man who tossed fertility pamphlets like weapons across our kitchen table. The same man who told his friends, his family, his new girlfriend, that I couldn't carry life. And now, he stood frozen under a balloon arch that read, "Welcome, baby." My children, the ones I wasn't supposed to have, toddled past his stunned silence in tiny coordinated bow ties like karma in human form. Because karma doesn't always whisper. Sometimes, she roars up in a white Lamborghini and Dior sunglasses. I used to be Jennifer Evans, the woman who whispered affirmations to herself in bathroom stalls between hormone shots. The wife who cried into throw pillows no one ever thought to ask about. The woman he left behind because he wanted a family. What he didn't know. I already had one. But before I hand you the front row seat to the implosion of a man's meticulously staged pity party, let's rewind. Let me take you back to the beginning. To a time when I still believed that love could fix anything. Even a man like Christian. But before we begin, click subscribe, like this video and tell me where in the world you're watching from, and I hope this story makes you believe that nothing is impossible if only you believe. Now let's start. They say hindsight is 20/20, but I swear mine must have been wearing rose-colored contacts, the expensive kind. Because back then, if you'd told me the man who would one day weaponize my womb against me was hiding behind that boyish grin and those well-tailored suits, I would have laughed in your face. Christian was perfect. Too perfect. The kind of man who made you feel like your story finally had a plot twist in your favor. We met at a charity fundraiser in Atlanta. I was there representing a non-profit that helped young women transition out of abusive homes. He was on a sponsorship panel for his tech startup, looking polished and powerful with just the right amount of scruff. I dropped my pen during a panel discussion, and he picked it up like some cheesy rom-com extra who thought he was the lead. But somehow it worked. We talked during the break. Then after. Then all night. He texted me before I even got home. You were the most grounded person in that room. Beautiful, too. I hope this isn't the last conversation we have. Of course I swooned. Not because he was rich, but because he was intentional. Intentional men are dangerous when they're lying. Within 6 months, we were exclusive. Within a year, we were planning our future with Pinterest boards and Zillow listings. We moved into a loft downtown. Every morning, he kissed me like we were in a commercial for perfect couples who make green smoothies and journal together. And yeah, I know how that sounds now, but then, it felt like safety, like certainty. Our wedding was at a vineyard in North Georgia. Classy, intimate, all blush tones and gold accents. He cried when I walked down the aisle. So did I. My mother whispered, "He looks at you like you hung the stars." I believed it. I really did. The first year of marriage was bliss. We traveled. We merged bank accounts. We planned to start trying after our first anniversary. Christian was the one who suggested it, even circled baby names in a little leather notebook he kept in his nightstand drawer. I found it once while cleaning. Jasmine if it's a girl, Jalen if it's a boy. Underneath he'd scribbled, "Black excellence begins at birth." My heart melted. We started trying. Month 1. I bought a "we're expecting" onesie just in case. Month 3. I threw it in the back of my closet. Month 6. I started tracking every ovulation symptom like my uterus was a science project. Peeing on sticks. Timing sex like a military op. Christian was supportive. At first, he made jokes to keep things light. They called it baby boot camp. Told me not to stress. But each month that passed, I could feel him folding in on himself. Just slightly. Like disappointment was setting up camp in the corners of our home. I told myself it was normal. Couples struggled all the time. It wasn't that he was pulling away. He was just processing. Right. By month 10, the tone had shifted. He stopped saying things like, "Our kids are going to be so cute." He started saying things like, "You sure you did the test right?" When I told him I made another doctor's appointment, he sighed. "Maybe we just need to stop making it such a thing." Once, during an argument, he blurted out, "Maybe your body's just not built for this." He said he didn't mean it. But here's the thing about words. Once they hit the air, you can't just vacuum them back up. The irony? The doctor told us everything looked normal. I clung to that word like it was a lifeline. But what is normal when your husband starts avoiding eye contact during ultrasounds? He didn't come to my 3rd appointment. Said he had a board meeting. That was the day I cried in a Target parking lot for 25 minutes straight, holding prenatal vitamins in one hand and a Starbucks in the other, realizing I'd become the cliché I used to feel sorry for. A month later, I started fertility treatments. Christian was distant but still there. Like a well-dressed ghost who knew all the right words but none of the emotion. He scheduled reminders for my injections, but never asked me how I felt. He picked up my hormone meds, but never held me when the side effects made me scream into pillows. I was a science experiment he'd lost interest in, waiting for results he never really believed in anymore. I told myself this was just stress. That love had seasons. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman I'd become, bloated from hormone shots, clinging to the man who once said, "Even if we never have kids, you're still my family." Now he barely touched me. And when he did, it felt like a courtesy. Once I suggested we take a break from the process. Go on a vacation, just breathe. He said, "It's fine. We're almost there." But his eyes said something else entirely. "I don't want this anymore." Then came the silence. That heavy, soul-eating kind that settles between two people who share a house but not a heartbeat. We stopped kissing goodnight. Our texts became logistics. He started staying at work later. Or so he said. I tried to initiate intimacy one night, wearing the old lace he used to love. He blinked. Said, "You look tired, Jen. You should rest." Tired. I was exhausted. From hope. From waiting. From loving someone who had already mentally left the building. The next morning he made eggs. Sat across from me in the kitchen. And with the emotional delivery of a voicemail said, "Maybe we should take a break from trying." Pause. Then, or maybe from each other. And just like that, the floor beneath my marriage cracked open. The morning after Christian uttered those 9 words, "Maybe we should take a break from each other," the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a waiting room I didn't realize I was sitting in, holding a number that would never be called. He packed a duffel bag like he was going on a weekend retreat, not stepping out of a life we'd built together. No yelling. No drama. Just silence and folded shirts. I asked where he was staying. He said, "Just a hotel near the office. I need time to think." I believed him. Because I still wanted to. For the first week, I told myself this was just a pause. that we'd go to therapy, that maybe we needed space to remember why we started. I even made his favorite chili on Wednesday, out of habit, and left it on the counter like some pathetic offering to a man who no longer lived here. When he didn't respond to any of my texts, not even the "I miss you" one, I started to unravel. I barely slept. I kept playing back our conversations, dissecting them like crime scene evidence. Was it me? Did I pressure him too much about the baby? Did I stop being the woman he fell in love with? I asked my reflection those questions every morning, tracing the dark circles under my eyes like bruises. A week turned into 2. Then a month. His things were still in the closet, but he wasn't coming back. I should have known that when he started ignoring my calls completely, or when he blocked me from seeing his Instagram stories. Subtle cruelty, the modern kind. The kind that doesn't leave fingerprints. What I didn't know, not yet, was that Christian hadn't moved into a hotel. He'd moved in with her. Alyssa, the fitness influencer. The one he swore was just a girl from the gym. The one who flirted too much and wasn't even his type. Turns out she was exactly his type, just not the one he wanted to admit to when he still needed to keep up appearances. I found out the way women usually find out, through someone who wasn't supposed to tell me. His cousin, Tasha, ran into him at a Whole Foods across town. Said he looked surprised. Said he had his arm around a girl in a peach matching set and designer sneakers. She was definitely staying with him, Tasha told me on the phone, hesitating. They were sharing a cart. That hit harder than it should have. They were sharing a cart. Like I'd been reduced to an expired loyalty card. Swiped and tossed. The next blow came from his family. Slowly, then all at once. At first, his mother stopped calling. Then his sister, who used to text me memes every day, ghosted entirely. And when I bumped into his aunt at a brunch fundraiser, she smiled at me like I was an unstable coworker no one wanted to sit next to. She tilted her head and asked, "Are you doing better now?" Like I'd just come out of a rehab program for being barren and emotionally unfit. That's when I realized Christian had started rewriting the narrative, and I wasn't even in the room to defend myself. He told them I was obsessed with getting pregnant, that I'd become manic and unhinged, that I was spiraling and needed help. Help? Help for what exactly? For injecting my thighs every night with meds we both agreed on? For crying in bathrooms when yet another test came back negative? For loving a man who left without warning and moved in with someone younger, perkier, and less complicated? I was grieving for the future. He was curating a new one. I called him the night I found out. Not to beg, not at first, but to demand truth. He answered like I was an inconvenience. "Jen, what do you want?" "I want to know if you're living with her." Silence. Then, this is exactly what I meant. You obsess. You spiral. That night, I screamed into a pillow so hard I tore the seam open. The next day, I got my period, 10 days late. I don't know what hurt more, the blood or the brief, pathetic hope that maybe I'd still have a piece of him growing inside me. I made one last attempt. One last, desperate, humiliating plea. I emailed him. Subject: please. One last try. I wrote about IVF. About how we still had a chance. How I'd found a clinic with great success rates. How we could freeze embryos. How I was still willing, still hopeful. He didn't reply. Instead, 3 days later, I received a manila envelope on my doorstep. No return address. Inside, divorce papers. No warning. No explanation. Just a sticky note on top with the words, "I think this is for the best. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." I don't remember the sound I made, only that it wasn't human. It came from somewhere primal. A sob birthed in the part of me that still believed love had rules. That marriage didn't just end like expired leases. He was already gone. Gone from our home. Gone from our vows. Gone from the version of me that still believed he'd come back. I didn't just lose my husband. I lost myself. Grief is strange. It doesn't hit all at once, it lingers. It waits until you think you've finally found your footing, then pulls you under when you least expect it. For months after the divorce papers came, I lived on autopilot. Work, sleep, cry, repeat. I'd stopped checking social media. Too many pictures of baby bumps and gender reveals. Too many smiling couples who looked like what I thought I was supposed to be. But every now and then, I'd stumble across Christian's face in a tagged post, at some charity event, his arm wrapped around her. Alyssa. She was glowing. He was too. And that hurt more than I wanted to admit. Because I used to look like that. Once upon a time, I was the woman standing beside him, believing in the promise behind his smile. But grief can't live forever. Not even when it tries to. One morning, I woke up, looked around my quiet apartment, and realized something terrifying. I didn't even recognize the woman in the mirror. My eyes were dull, my shoulders slumped, and there was a hollow in my chest where hope used to be. And then I saw it, the folder. The one from the fertility clinic. Stuffed into the bottom drawer of my old nightstand. Still sealed from the last appointment we never went to. It was labeled in black Sharpie. Evans/treatment cycle 6. For months, I couldn't even look at it. But that morning, something in me shifted. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I was just done being haunted. So I opened it. Inside were test results, hormone charts, and lab notes I didn't understand. But one thing caught my eye. My name wasn't on every page. Some documents had only Christian's initials. Others had scribbled out notes. A few were missing signatures. And that's when the suspicion crept in. Something wasn't right. I called the clinic. The receptionist was polite, chipper even. "Hi, this is Southern Reproductive Specialists. How can I help you today?" "Hi," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "This is Jennifer Evans. I was a patient there last year. Under my married name. I need copies of all my medical records. Every single test result. Every doctor's note. All of it." There was a pause. Papers rustled. "Oh, Mrs. Evans, it looks like some of your files are marked confidential. I'll need to speak with Dr. Navarro before releasing them." Confidential. My voice cracked. "They're my records." "Yes, but your husband." "Well, your ex-husband requested some privacy restrictions when he was listed as your treatment partner." My blood went cold. "He did what?" "Just standard procedure for joint fertility treatments," she said quickly. "But I'll make a note that you're requesting full access." 2 days later, I was sitting in Dr. Navarro's office. The walls were still painted that same calming shade of blue, but it felt like a trap now. He smiled when he saw me. "Jennifer, it's been a while. How are you holding up? Can we skip that part?" I said. My voice was steady, but my hands weren't. "I want my results. All of them. No summaries. No edits. Just the truth." He nodded slowly and pulled a thick file from his desk drawer. "Of course." He flipped through the pages, stopping once or twice, his brow furrowing. Finally, he looked up. "Jennifer, I'm not sure what to say. Your tests were always normal." My heartbeat stuttered. "Normal?" He nodded again. "Your hormone levels, ovarian reserve, uterine lining, everything was within the healthy range. You were never infertile." I stared at him, the words hovering in the air like smoke. Then why did he say? Dr. Navarro hesitated. Christian's test results were a different story. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the chair. "What do you mean?" He sighed. "Low motility. Poor morphology. It's not impossible, but it would have been very difficult for him to conceive naturally." I remember discussing additional options with him. I blinked hard, trying to process. You discussed it with him? Yes. He asked that we keep his results private. Said you were under a lot of stress, and he didn't want to burden you. Burden me? I laughed, sharp and hollow. He said I was the problem. He made me take all those treatments, all those shots. He blamed me. Dr. Navarro's face softened. Jennifer, I'm so sorry. I wasn't aware of what was happening at home. I assumed you both were on the same page. On the same page. No. We weren't even in the same book. He handed me a printed copy of my full file. Pages of proof that my body had never been broken. I thanked him, though my throat burned with rage. When I got home, I spread the papers across my dining table like puzzle pieces. My results, his results, and the lies in between. That's when I noticed something else. Several dates didn't match. Appointments I never attended. Forms I never signed. It looked like he'd altered entries. There were fake notes under my name. Patient anxious about results. Agreed to postpone further testing until the partner feels ready. I never said that. I never postponed anything. It hit me like a punch. Christian had tampered with my records. He wasn't just hiding the truth. He was rewriting it. Controlling what I knew. Keeping me in the dark so I'd believe what he wanted me to believe. That I was broken. That he was the victim. That our marriage fell apart because of me. I remember sinking to the floor, surrounded by the proof of every lie he'd ever told. The air felt too thick to breathe. Every moment came flooding back. His sighs, his half-smiles, the way he'd say, "Don't stress, babe, it's not your fault," like he already knew exactly whose fault it was. The pity in his eyes wasn't compassion. It was arrogance. He didn't want a child. He wanted control. I sat there for hours, numb, until the anger came. Not the wild, fiery kind, but the slow-burning kind that settles deep in your bones. The kind that whispers, "Never again." Because now I saw it for what it was. The truth wasn't that I couldn't give him a family. The truth was he never wanted one with me. He needed a reason to leave, and he made me his excuse. He didn't just gaslight me. He rewired my entire reality. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to call him. I wasn't going to beg or scream or demand an explanation. He'd built his life on lies. I'd rebuild mine on truth. That night, I took a long, scalding shower and scrubbed every trace of him off my skin. The shampoo, the razor, even the towel he used to steal when his was damp. All of it went into a trash bag. Then I opened a clean notebook and wrote 7 words across the first page. He didn't want kids with me. Pause. Then I added the truth that set my entire soul on fire. He just wanted to make sure I'd never have them without him. There's a version of me that didn't survive that night on the kitchen floor. The version that believed Christian's lies. The one who measured her worth in pregnancy tests and ovulation charts. The one who thought that if she just loved harder, bent further, sacrificed more, she'd be enough. She died quietly, beneath a pile of test results and betrayal. What rose in her place was someone else entirely. I didn't leave a note. Didn't call anyone. Didn't make a scene. I packed everything that still felt like mine into 2 suitcases and left Atlanta behind without looking back. My mother didn't understand at first. Neither did my friends. But I wasn't leaving to be found. I was leaving to rebuild. And I started with my name. Jennifer Evans became Jennifer Blackwell. No more hyphens. No more Evans, a name that belonged to a past riddled with grief. I moved to Austin, Texas, a city humming with creativity and reinvention. I found a loft above a yoga studio with creaky wooden floors and just enough light to feel hopeful. The first few weeks were quiet. Lonely even. But not empty. For the first time in years I could hear myself think. And what I heard was this: "You are still here. Start again." So I did. I enrolled in a 6-month business accelerator for women entrepreneurs. I didn't know what I was building yet, only that I wanted to help people like me. Women who'd been lied to, discarded, gaslit into silence. We had classes on branding, marketing, and customer psychology. But the best part, the healing sessions. We sat in circles and talked about what it meant to start over. Not with perfect plans, but with broken pieces. And every time I opened my mouth, women nodded. Some cried. Some came up to me afterward and said, "I thought I was the only one." That's when the idea hit me. Wholeness and Company. A wellness brand that wasn't about green juice and vision boards, but about real, raw recovery. We offered online courses, retreats, support groups, and digital journals designed to guide women from emotional devastation to personal reinvention. No toxic positivity. No good vibes only. Just the truth. Healing. Power. The first month we had 12 clients. By the third, over 3,000 women had signed up for our free Trauma to Triumph workbook. Turns out I wasn't alone. And neither were they. And somewhere in the middle of all this, he walked in. His name was Damon. I met him at a branding conference, standing beside the coffee cart with a half-broken lanyard and a smile that didn't try too hard. He introduced himself with a firm handshake and said, "You're the woman behind Wholeness & Co., right? My sister swears by your journaling program." I smiled. "Tell her I said thank you. And that the breakup detox one works best if you do the hard questions first." He laughed. She skipped straight to the revenge chapter. We grabbed coffee. Then dinner. Then long walks under downtown lights where we talked about everything except the people who broke us. He wasn't flashy. He didn't love bomb me. He listened. The kind of listening that made you feel seen, heard, safe. One night, over takeout and documentaries, I told him the whole story. Not the sanitized version. The raw one. He didn't flinch. He didn't interrupt. He just said, "You didn't deserve any of that. And the fact that you're here, helping other women, instead of curled in bed hating the world, that's a strength most people can't comprehend." I think I fell in love with him right there. It took me weeks to admit I was even thinking about kids again. The fear still sat in my throat like glass. But one morning, after a brunch full of laughing toddlers and mimosa-sticky smiles, Damon turned to me and said, "You still want to be a mom, don't you?" I blinked, startled. "Why do you ask?" "Because you light up every time you hold someone else's baby. And because you've never stopped hoping, even when you pretend you have." I looked down at my half-eaten fruit bowl. "I'm scared," I whispered. "I know," he said gently. "But maybe this time, we will try without pressure, without charts. Just love. Let's see what your body does when it's no longer fighting for someone else's approval." So we did. No hormones. No alarms. No calendars taped to the fridge. Just trust. The second month I felt different. Not nauseous. Not dramatic. Just off. My breasts were sore. My mood was unpredictable. I cried during a coffee commercial. I didn't tell Damon. Not at first. I took the test alone, because I needed to be the one to see it. No audience. No judgment. Just me. 2 pink lines. I laughed. Then I cried. Then dropped to my knees in the bathroom, hugging that little stick like it was a miracle. I drove straight to my OB's office, barely able to sit still in the waiting room. They ran tests. Did an ultrasound. When the doctor turned the screen toward me, her eyes were wide. "Jennifer," she smiled almost in disbelief. "You're pregnant." I nodded, already crying. "I know. I just wanted to be sure." She looked back at the screen. "Well, you might want to brace yourself." My heart skipped. "There are 3 sacs." I blinked. "Wait, 3. She laughed gently. "Congratulations. You're having triplets." I burst into laughter and tears all at once. Triplets. Me. The woman who was once told she'd never be a mother. The woman who injected hormones and prayed in bathroom stalls. The woman a man walked away from because she couldn't give him a family. Now, I was building 3 at once. Damon nearly dropped his coffee when I told him. Then he pulled me into the tightest hug of my life and whispered, "The universe owed you something. Looks like it paid in full." That night, I stood on the balcony of our apartment, hand resting on my still flat stomach, and breathed in the city air like it was my first breath. I had been broken, but I was not defeated. I'd been rewritten, but not erased. And soon, 3 tiny hearts would beat because I chose to live. Because I chose to leave. To heal. To begin again. He said I'd never be a mother. The universe disagreed. By the time my triplets were 10 months old, my face had changed. Not from exhaustion, though Lord knows motherhood was no spa vacation, but from something deeper. Something earned. There was a steadiness in my eyes now. A kind of calm that only comes from surviving something you weren't sure you'd make it out of. I wore my peace like armor, my children like a crown. And my past. It was archived, boxed up like old tax records. Unnecessary, irrelevant, but there. Just in case. That's why when I got the text, I almost laughed. "Hey, random, but I thought you should know. Christian's people are planning a baby shower. Word is, you're on the invite list." It was from Tasha, his cousin. The same one who accidentally exposed his secret Whole Foods love nest with Alyssa. She had always been the only one in his family who kept it real, and the only one who didn't turn her back on me. I stared at my phone. Me. Invited to their baby shower? At first I thought it was a mistake. Or a cruel joke. Why in the world would Christian, want me at his fairy tale backyard circus with the woman he left me for? But then Tasha followed up with a voice note. "Girl." I wasn't going to say anything, but I overheard Christian talking to his boy Deshaun at his gym last night. They were clowning. I mean clowning. He said, and I quote, "Let her show up broken. Let everybody see why I left. She'll probably show up in some Target clearance dress looking like motherhood's worst-case scenario." I didn't move. Didn't blink. Tasha's voice grew more serious. He also said, "She's so desperate for attention she won't miss it. I hope she shows up. People need to see what I escaped." That's when something inside me went still. Not angry. Not hurt. Just still. Like the calm before a hurricane. I looked over at the triplets on the playmat. Amari was chewing on a board book. Sienna was pulling off her sock for the 3rd time that hour. And Jalen was trying to climb onto the couch, his tiny arms determined. I whispered more to myself than to them. "You want a show? I'll bring the opening act, the main event, and the curtain call." I opened the invitation when it came 2 days later. Digital, of course, like they couldn't even be bothered to pretend it was personal. It was pastel pink with cursive fonts and little gold rattles. Celebrating the upcoming arrival of baby Madison Peterson. Hosted at a private garden venue in Buckhead. Brunch, mimosas, and photo ops provided. Friends and family only. And somehow my name had made the list. I clicked RSVP. Attending plus 3 guests. Then I smiled. A real smile. Not bitter. Not smug. Just sure. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I wasn't going to show up angry. I wasn't going to rant or cause a scene, or throw wine in anyone's face. That wasn't my style. That wasn't power. That was a performance. No, I was going to make it undeniable. I called my stylist, the same one who'd helped me craft the Wholeness and Company brand look. I told her, I need something that says arrival. Think, vengeance in heels. But tasteful. She sent over sketches within the hour. A custom monochrome jumpsuit, tailored to fit every curve, with gold hardware and clean lines. Not loud, not flashy, just expensive looking and unapologetic. For the kids, we chose soft pastels. A subtle nod to the theme but elevated. Tiny designer loafers for the boys. A tulle dress for Sienna with delicate pearl details. Matching headbands. Coordinated accessories. Personalized name tags with Blackwell in script. Because this wasn't just about showing up. This was about corrections. Christian had been telling one story for far too long. Painting himself as the savior who escaped the barren woman too fragile to be a wife and too broken to be a mother. He weaponized my trauma. He paraded my pain. And now, when the curtain was finally rising on his dream life, he wanted me there. Not for closure. Not for healing. But for spectacle. He wanted to humiliate me. To salt the wound. But the wound had healed. And what was left was scar tissue made of steel. So when the day came, I wasn't nervous. I was radiant. I fed the kids breakfast, laid out their clothes, and played our favorite playlist on the Bluetooth speaker while I got ready. Every move was deliberate. Every breath is intentional. When I zipped up the jumpsuit, I didn't see the girl who used to cry in fertility clinics or beg a man to stay. I saw a woman who survived. A mother. A CEO. A force. And when I buckled Amari's shoes and Jalen clung to my leg, and Sienna smeared oatmeal across her dress right before I wiped it clean, I didn't think about the old pain. I thought about what it meant to win quietly, then show up loudly. By noon, we were in the white Lamborghini SUV Damon had surprised me with for my birthday. He kissed me before we left. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked, adjusting Sienna's headband with gentle fingers. "I don't need to," I said. "But I want to." He nodded. "Then make it a memory." And I would. Not just for me, but for every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. Who'd been discarded, underestimated, erased. Who was waiting for proof that life could bloom after betrayal. We rolled up to the venue 15 minutes after start time. Not late. Just intentionally dramatic. I parked in front. Didn't bother with the valet. Let them see us arrive. I got out first, adjusted my sunglasses, then opened the back door. The crowd was already mingling. Champagne glasses in hand. Soft music floating through the air. Gold balloons. A massive banner with the words, "Baby Madison, our little miracle." Christian stood at the center of it all in a tailored navy blazer, posing with Alyssa, whose baby bump was artfully cradled in both hands. His smile faltered the moment he saw me. Alyssa froze. And I simply lifted Sienna into one arm, took Amari and Jalen by the hands, and walked toward the chaos I had not created, but was born to reclaim. Because I wasn't the broken one. I was the arrival. See you soon, Christian. There's a specific kind of silence that happens when the unexpected walks into a room. Not the kind of silence that asks a question. The kind that answers one with a punch to the gut. That was the kind of silence that greeted me as I stepped through the white garden archway into Christian and Alyssa's pastel playground of a baby shower. Every head turned. Every flute of champagne paused halfway to parted lips. A fork clinked against a mimosa glass and didn't make it back up. I could hear the wind brushing through the satin drapes hanging from the pergola. A soft instrumental of Beyoncé's Halo was playing somewhere in the background. The irony nearly made me laugh. I didn't. I held Sienna on my left hip. Her little fist curled into the shoulder of my monochrome jumpsuit. Her tulle skirt puffed around my arm like a flower in bloom. Amari and Jalen toddled beside me, holding my hands, tiny fingers gripping, eyes wide and curious. Behind us, the white Lamborghini gleamed like a punctuation mark at the end of a declaration. It wasn't just an entrance. It was a correction. Christian's champagne flute slipped from his hand. Glass shattered. No one moved. Alyssa stared at me like she'd seen a ghost that refused to stay buried. And Christian, oh Christian, his face didn't fall. It collapsed. Whatever mask he'd been wearing, of father-to-be, of doting partner, of man who got it right, this time, shattered right along with the stemware at his feet. His mouth opened. No sound came out. I kept walking. I didn't rush. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. Amari stumbled slightly over a decorative cobblestone, and I paused just long enough to steady him, then kept moving, past the rose-covered archways, the tables adorned with gold mommy-to-be signs, the mountain of baby gifts wrapped in white and blush. I made it to the center of the garden, the epicenter of their manufactured joy. Christian's mother stepped forward, squinting like the sun might be deceiving her. "Jennifer?" she asked slowly, her voice a strange blend of disbelief and recognition. "Whose children are those?" I turned to face her directly. Not a single beat missed. "They're mine," I said, with a smile so calm it could slice marble. "Meet Amari, Sienna, and Jalen Blackwell." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a sound wave at a funeral. Christian's mother staggered back half a step, hand covering her mouth. One of his cousins dropped a mini quiche onto the patio stones. A server froze mid-pour, sparkling juice still bubbling from the bottle. Alyssa looked at Christian, panic blooming behind her perfectly lined lashes. "You said," she started, voice already cracking. "You said she." "I said a lot of things," Christian cut in, too fast, too loud. His voice cracked. I stepped forward, just enough to close the space between us. "You said I was barren," I said, softly, but the words hit like thunder. "You told your family I was broken. That I was the reason we never had children." He glanced nervously at the people encircling us now, a semicircle of truth coming to collect. "I didn't, Jennifer, I didn't. This isn't the time." "No, Christian," I said, resting a hand gently on Jalen's shoulder. "This is exactly the time." My voice was velvet-wrapped steel. I wasn't angry. I wasn't flustered. I was just done. "You orchestrated this invitation," I continued. "You wanted me to show up, humiliated, alone, defeated." More murmurs now. Someone whispered, "He invited her?" Alyssa was pale. Her hand trembled as she clutched her baby bump. "You didn't want me here to celebrate," I said. "You wanted to make sure your version of the story went unchallenged. The version where you're the victim. Where you escaped the crazy, infertile ex-wife who ruined your chance at fatherhood." Christian opened his mouth. I lifted a hand. He stopped. "But the truth has a nasty little habit," I said. "It always shows up. Eventually." I stepped back and looked at my children. All three now sitting quietly on a nearby bench, Sienna clutching a juice box, Amari and Jalen kicking their feet. "I got pregnant the second time I tried, Christian. Naturally. No hormones. No meds. Just peace. Just love." His face turned sheet white. "I requested my medical records," I continued, eyes now locked on him. "All of them. Including the ones you tampered with. Including the notes you had removed. The ones that clearly state I have no fertility issues." A woman in the back gasped. It was his aunt, the same one who once said, "Maybe God just didn't choose you." I looked at her now. Turns out God didn't say no to me. Just to him. The crowd began shifting. Eyes darting. Judgments forming. Truth replacing fiction. One breath at a time. Alyssa's lip trembled. "Is that true?" she asked Christian, her voice thin. "Did you lie about her fertility?" Christian didn't answer. He didn't have to. I leaned in just slightly. Not menacing. Just final. "You said I was barren," I said. "Looks like the truth just RSVP'd." I turned away from him then, slowly, and knelt beside my children. I kissed Sienna's forehead, tucked Jalen's curls behind his ear, and handed Amari a toy truck from my purse. Behind me, chaos was unfolding. Alyssa's voice rising. Christian stumbling over explanations. People murmuring, some walking away already. Champagne flutes being quietly set down. But I didn't watch it burn. I didn't need to. I'd already lit the match. And I had 3 reasons, beautiful, brilliant, undeniable reasons, to walk away from the ashes without ever looking back. When a man spends years rewriting your story, there's something poetic about getting to read it out loud, the way you remember it. I didn't plan to speak that day. Not out loud. Not like that. But when I saw the way the truth rippled through the crowd, the gasps, the shifting feet, the faces turning toward Christian like they'd suddenly realized who he really was, something inside me clicked. For years I'd been silent. He'd taken that silence as permission. Not anymore. Jennifer, Christian started, his voice shaking. You don't understand how this looks. I turned toward him, slow, deliberate. No, Christian. You don't understand how it is. He blinked, glancing around as if searching for an exit in a room made entirely of eyes. Alyssa was still beside him, but the space between them was widening by the second. I walked to the nearest table, picked up a champagne flute, and set it back down, not for the drink but for the sound. The soft clink drew everyone's attention. Since we're all here, I said, my voice steady, let me tell you what he didn't. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the baby shower playlist, some airy pop song, cut off mid-chorus. I reached into my purse. Not for drama. For documentation. A thick, cream-colored envelope. My medical records. Originals. Unedited. This, I said, holding it up, is my truth. For years, I believed I was broken. That my body was incapable of carrying life. That I failed as a wife, as a woman, as a human being. A murmur of sympathy moved through the women in the crowd. The mothers, the aunts, the sisters who'd known that kind of pain. But here's what you didn't know, I continued. I wasn't the problem. He was. I turned to Christian. His jaw flexed, hands twitching. These, I said, laying the papers on the dessert table, are my fertility records. Unaltered. They show that every test I took came back normal. My hormone levels. My ovarian reserve. My uterine lining. All healthy. I met his eyes. You remember that word, don't you, Christian? Healthy. The one you used to choke on whenever it didn't describe you. Gasps. Then silence. I let the words sit there, heavy but clean. He told you I was broken, I said, now addressing the crowd. That I couldn't give him the family he wanted. But the truth is simpler. I gestured toward him, calm and clinical. He was the problem. And he couldn't face it. So instead of being a man, he became a storyteller. And I was his villain. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." I nodded toward the table, where the papers were still resting. He went so far as to alter my records. To hide the truth. To make sure I would never question it. So that when he left me, for her, I nodded toward Alyssa, he could play the part of the poor, heartbroken man who had to move on because I couldn't give him what he needed. Christian's mother put a hand over her mouth, shaking her head. Christian, please tell me she's lying. He didn't. He couldn't. Because lies need silence to survive. And he was choking. Alyssa stepped back. Her face was pale, eyes filling with tears. You told me she was crazy, she whispered. You said she obsessed over treatments, that she... I did, I said, my voice firm. Because I trusted him. Because I believed the man I married wouldn't lie about something that's sacred. About something that defined our whole lives. Alyssa's lip trembled. You said she couldn't have children. I smiled sadly. And yet... I gestured to the edge of the patio, where my triplets were now sitting on a picnic blanket, playing with toy blocks a kind stranger had brought over. Their laughter cut through the tension like sunlight through fog. 3 miracles, I said softly. Each one proves that he didn't just underestimate me. He underestimated the truth itself. Alyssa stared at Christian as though she'd never seen him before. Then she turned, took a shaky breath and walked away. No scene. No words. Just distance. The crowd parted for her, quiet, reverent almost, the way you make space for someone leaving a wreck she didn't cause. Christian's family was next. His sister muttered something under her breath and stepped away. His mother didn't move at all, just stood there, eyes wet, whispering, "How could you?" He looked around, panicked now, voice cracking. "You all don't understand, she's twisting, she's..." I shook my head. You don't get to say I'm twisting the story when you spent years bending it around your lies. He reached for the papers, but I was faster. I slid them back into the envelope and tucked it under my arm. "Don't worry," I said quietly. "You'll get your copy in court." Then I turned to face everyone one last time. "He invited me here to humiliate me," I said. "To parade his new life in front of the woman he left behind. To make sure the story stayed the same, that he was the hero who finally got what he wanted." I smiled. Calm. Measured. But karma's not a guest. I let my gaze sweep across the crowd. Every stunned face, every whisper, every secret that had just been unburied. She's the headline. No one clapped. No one dared. But they didn't need to. The silence was enough. The truth was standing there. Not loud, not vengeful, but undeniable. I gathered my children. Sienna reached for my hand, smiling like she understood something bigger than all of us. Amari tugged at my sleeve, showing me a half-built tower of blocks. Jalen babbled something that sounded suspiciously like, "Mama." And with that, I turned, calm, whole, free, and walked away. Behind me, the party began to collapse in whispers. Behind me, Christian's carefully built house of lies caved in. Behind me, a man who once called me Barren stood in a garden full of proof that the only thing truly empty was him. The sun was beginning to set by the time I pulled out of that driveway. The sky was that strange in-between color, half gold, half lavender, the kind of sky that almost dares you to feel something bigger than yourself. In the rearview mirror, I saw Christian's perfect little world shrinking into a blur of pastel and shame. The music from the party was still faintly audible, but it sounded hollow now, like a song that didn't belong to me anymore. Amari was dozing in his car seat. Sienna was humming softly. Jalen was gripping his toy truck like it was treasure. And I was smiling. Not the smug kind. Not the vengeful kind. Just the quiet, satisfied kind that comes when a storm finally runs out of rain. Because it wasn't just about him. It never really was. It was about me finally remembering who I was before I let him tell me otherwise. 3 days later, I got a message. It came at 10:47 p.m., long after the kids were asleep. My phone buzzed once, lighting up with a name I never thought I'd see in my inbox. Alyssa. Hi, Jennifer. I don't even know where to start. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For believing in him. For judging you before I even met you. He told me so many lies about you, about your marriage, about what really happened. You were right. He was the problem. I'm leaving him. I just wanted you to know that. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. You don't owe me anything. Just make sure your next chapter isn't built on someone else's ashes. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Some truths speak for themselves. A week later, I sat in my office. My own office, at Wholeness & Company. We'd just hit a major milestone. The video clip from the baby shower, someone had filmed it, went viral across social media. Not for the drama, but for the power. For the composure. For the line that resonated across continents. He told you I was broken. But the truth is simpler. He was the problem. Women from around the world started sharing it. Thousands of messages flooded in. Some wrote, "You said what I wish I could have." Others wrote, "Thank you for showing us what survival looks like." Within 2 weeks, I was invited to speak at 3 conferences, 5 podcasts, and 1 national talk show. But this time, it wasn't about the scandal. It was about healing. About the way truth doesn't just free you, it rebuilds you. And wholeness and company. We grew faster than I could have imagined. What started as a side project born of pain became a movement powered by purpose. One night, after a long day of meetings and diaper changes and answering DMs from women in time zones I couldn't keep straight, I sat out on the balcony with Damon. The city glowed below us. Twinkling lights, laughter drifting up from the street. He handed me a glass of wine, then pulled something small from his pocket. Not flashy. Not grand. Just a simple ring, elegant and real. "I've been thinking," he said softly. "We've built something incredible together. You, me, the kids, this life. But I need to say this right." He turned to me, eyes steady. "I don't want to complete you, Jen. You're already whole. I just want to walk beside you while you keep becoming who you are." My throat tightened. "Damon." He smiled. "I'm not asking because you need me. I'm asking because I want to spend the rest of my life with a woman who finally knows she doesn't need anyone to stand tall." And just like that I said yes. Not because I was saved, but because I was seen. A few months later, I stood in front of a packed crowd at a book signing. My book, Wholeness, The Art of Rebuilding What They Tried to Break, had just debuted at #1. Rows of women filled the event hall, some with strollers, some with scars, all with stories. The host introduced me, the applause washed over me, and when the room finally quieted, I smiled and read from the last page of my book. Once upon a time, I thought motherhood made me whole. But it was knowing my worth, with or without a man, that truly gave birth to me. The room erupted. Applause. Tears. Laughter. And as I looked out over that sea of faces, strong, imperfect, unbroken, I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who cried in sterile clinics. The one who begged a man to stay. The one who believed her value was measured in motherhood. She died, yes. But in her place, a woman had risen who understood something deeper. That sometimes what breaks you is just life making space for something better to grow. Later that night, after the crowd dispersed, I walked alone down the hallway of the venue. My heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing softly in the quiet. Outside, the city hummed, alive, pulsing, endless. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my photos. There they were, Amari, Sienna, and Jalen, sleeping in a pile of blankets, their faces pressed together like they'd been born knowing they were each other's home. And just before I put my phone away, I opened a note I'd written to myself months ago, the night I found the truth about Christian. I read it again and smiled. He invited me to break me, but I brought the story he can never erase. I closed the phone, stepped into the night, and exhaled, not like someone escaping, but like someone arriving. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.